Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting together. Megan? I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors together on Tuesday, July 27th at 9 a.m. Would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Elizabeth is.
All right, you've got 19.
19.
One excused and one vacant.
Okay, all right. All right, so we have 19 present, we have one vacant position and one excused. Presentation of the agenda. Is there a second?
Yes, you got it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Correspondence, you'll find the unassigned fund balance, a letter from Robert Seegers, and a letter from Jacques, Senator Jacques. Public comments.
Sure. You want to start in the room first or
Yeah.
online?
That's fine.
Joe, can you have a mic?
Also, you can turn your back, you can turn yourself on.
Okay, so we'll start with the individuals first online. If you'd like to speak, if you're on a computer, you can simply raise your hand using the Zoom application. Likewise, if you are dialed in on a phone, you can hit *9 and I can give you the floor. So I will ask if there's anyone who would like to speak. For the second time, is there anyone who'd like to speak? And for the third and final time, anyone who'd like to speak? Okay, having none, then we'll defer back now to the room if there's any public that'd like to speak. If you could please come up to the podium and give your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Donald Fricks, 8305 Cornerline Road, Fish Creek. Gotta make this work, sorry. May 27th, 2021, excerpts from Administrator Povic. Quote, the intent of the comment is not a publication of someone's opinion. The intent of the public comments or correspondence is not to provide a forum for publications of stuff that is not pertinent to our county board or our actions, unquote. For the June 22nd regular meeting, strictly opinionated and unsubstantiated claims alleging supervisor ethics violations submitted by Fish Creek PAR's sisters were published. Today's correspondence contains electronic mail not even addressed to the entire board and is nothing more than a politically partisan, politically self-serving, and typically exaggerated opinion of himself from Senator Jacques. Jacques' email did remind me of suggestions for our legislative and land conservation committee's immediate scrutiny, as his factual commitment to environmental protection is more honestly ascertained by examining his present legislative efforts to remove or relax compliance and remediation rules against polluters and Senate Bill 151, and to potentially make state enforcement of environmental protection rules or legal prosecution for PFAS contamination cleanup costs or damages effectively moot in his support of Assembly Bill 392, or by reading his effort to eliminate state regulations rightfully and presently preventing the sale of composted manure products. Under Senate Bill 113, Jacques proposes forbidding DATCAP from conducting field trials of and demands elimination of all composted manure product content labeling and that no content standards be imposed upon these products, and is proposing industrial manure producers and not state agency scientists to supply their own scientific analysis of composted manure products going forward if required. Consumer safety and protection appear largely eliminated under Senate Bill 113 to enable an industrial manure disposal monetizing scheme, i.e., we pay manure producers to spread their unevaluated and untested waste products onto our crops, lawns, gardens, parks, and playgrounds. Jock labels this as a water quality bill in his July 9th press release. Sadly, my rules compliant June 24th correspondence isn't published today. I had provided informative content about Robert's rules and clarified my June 22nd public comment, and so I'm left wondering if a special rules exemption was granted to the senator. As I wasn't accused publicly by
30
state
seconds.
legislators colleagues with sedition against the U.S. and our Constitution, and I wasn't a signatory to the January 5th, 2021 letter to Vice President Pence requesting an immediate delay in the constitutionally mandated 2020 Electoral College vote. To conclude, Chairman Lineout, please, for a third time, address the questions I posed here last month. Supervisor Fisher and Supervisor Austed, please thoroughly explain how the deliberate allowance of thousands of tons of highly contaminated sediment to transport downstream from a county-owned facility into the waters of our state, which are held in public trust, comports with any conservation of either soil or water, and equates even minimally with expected committee oversight responsibilities as chairs with regard to your respective county department. Fortunately, there's no time limit for supervisor response with the next agenda items, so please speak clearly into your microphones with your responses to these questions. Thank you.
We have allowed Don, he's representing somebody else today, so we've allowed him, he's going to make another statement representing somebody else.
If I can get it to open, sorry about that. This is from a person who has a medical appointment today.
You still need their name and address.
Yes, sir, thank you. This is from Christine Reed, Sleepy Hollow Road in Forestville. July 2021 Mill Pond Drawdown Update. Previous Mill Pond drawdown updates by county officials have been inaccurate and incomplete. It's outrageous to claim that this project is proceeding as planned or as expected. Recorded meetings spell out exactly what the county expected. What has actually occurred is a disastrous failure in environmental justice for the Anapee watershed. Since my update during the June 2021 board meeting, sediment has continued to flush into the lower Anapee. Door County Soil and Water Conservation claimed that release of sediment would be carefully controlled. That sediment will kill aquatic life in the riverbed and pollute Lake Michigan. Sediment continues to flush. There has been more rainfall in July, so the basin of the flowage has been submerged for days, and after each rain event, for days after each rain event. In fact, on July 17th, the mill pond filled to 4 inches below the top of the dam. There was no dryout and compaction of sediment, which was the project goal. Supervisors and the public were lied to in order to push this flawed plan through to a vote. People who lived in the area, environmental engineer Don Purong, P-U-R-R-O-N-G, DNR experts and fishermen warned that this area is not a good candidate for a drawdown and would not benefit unless sediment is first removed. That became obvious shortly after the experiment started. Friends of the Forestville Dam had requested that the county reevaluate and take corrective action repeatedly. The damage is done. The spectacular wildlife is decimated. Our downstream neighbors have been violated. It is my opinion. I sat with tearful parents who grieved that their children were being deprived of what was their fondest memories growing up. I listened to people who worked and saved to retire in peace and quiet just to have what they value most about their homes taken away. Family and pets had to be protected from serious health risks. Fishermen are furious. We want restitution, cleanup, restoration, and a guarantee that this abuse will not happen again to us or any taxpaying citizens who live here. We want to be included in decisions that so intimately affect our lives daily. Let's see, I am requesting that interactive, not view-only Zoom access continue for all board and committee meetings so that citizens can participate without going to the government building. Christine A. Reed, Friends of the Forestville Dam Incorporated. Thank you very much for your permission to do that.
Okay, that's it.
Anybody else? Okay. Is there any supervisor's response? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the June 22nd, 2021 regular meeting. There's a motion and a second. Any changes, deletions, corrections, grammatical errors, other remarks to be made? If not, by voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? County Administrator.
Sure, so in the packet is the, I guess, the monthly report, just a status as far as all the project updates. If there's any questions, I can definitely, I guess, take those. Just a few things to add, just in terms of some more detail. Just a couple of things. Obviously, on my report, you'll see that this month we don't have anything special labeled for COVID. So that's a good sign, but also we are obviously monitoring all the activities that are going on. There's always also been an initial push again to get people to mask up again. Again, I'll just follow the same protocol that we did last time. We relied on the federal government and the guidance from the CDC, and I guess we will continue to do so and work with our public health department moving forward. So, but we are aware of what's going on and we are monitoring things, and we will, I guess, address that appropriately as we move forward. Just another quick item, just in terms of an update. We are doing employee training in regards to diversity, equity, inclusion. That got sent out last week. I am including you in the email in terms of the training. It's an online version. If you'd like to participate, that's optional, not required. So you will be getting an email to your account. The way it works with our software, though, is that you have to make sure that your account is activated within 24 hours of that email. So if you have the email and you did not activate your account, you can contact HR and it'll get you, I guess, set up and reactivated, and you can take that training. Just another item, just to report, is we did get it approved through the administrative committee that we did provide an incentive to our employees to attend the county fair. So what we did is we provided a little voucher that gives them an entrance to the gate, and also plus a $5 voucher for food at one of our local food booths. So that was very well received by the employees. So I appreciate the support of the administrative committee, but also indirectly the county board in allowing that to go forward. The employees truly appreciate it. And again, it's just another opportunity to remind all the the board members that it is our 150th celebration of the county fair. It starts on Wednesday and again goes through Sunday. And there's flyers, I think, at your desk, or if they're at the back table, that you can see all the events. It's really going to be hopefully with the weather and everything, it'll be a great event for us and the county. And then just the last item in terms of this one update, this is a throw. I know it's more of an announcement, but we are looking at doing a budget retreat and talking with both Susie and David in terms of getting together. We were going to do obviously a full board retreat earlier in the year, but all the things related to COVID that got pushed back, and now we're just going to focus on doing a budget retreat. And tentatively right now, we'll finalize it here in August, but we're looking at September 1st. That'd be our traditional meeting with finance to actually bring out the budget. And we're looking at combining that into one meeting. So that'd be a Wednesday, September 1st, probably 9 to noon is what we're looking at for sure in terms of a time frame, and then probably like a lunch after that. But again, more details to follow, but just maybe tentatively mark your calendars if you could. So with that, I don't know if there's any other questions on the monthly report.
Yes, there is. Dave?
Thank you. Page 8, at the very bottom, 56 North 4th Avenue, former Yonkers building. For those individuals looking at this agenda packet and not being familiar with the ongoings that have been happening, they would presume that that was a basic statement relative to just that building. It isn't. It's in reference that the project should be completed by September. That also implies that there's some project going on. So can we change that or specifically reference only 56? It is confusing. And the project won't be completed in September, but rather the study will be completed in September, if I remember correctly. So if we can just make that update to make it
Sure, I can do that.
more
Thank you.
accurate.
Sure,
Thank you.
I can definitely do that. Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
Todd?
Under special studies, for those of us that are new board members, compensation plan review, on our table here, when we got here, there's a document, Excel document with a bunch of status for other counties. Is that the plan that is complete, that is going to go to admin? Is that what this is about?
No, actually, there's two things that are going on. The handout that's at your stations was just a review of all the compensations that are done by other county boards. What right now the admin committee is looking at that in terms of our rules. We have to establish the wages for the next county board by November. That has to be adopted, so it has to be adopted in October, correct, Joe?
Yeah.
Right. So it should be adopted in October. So again, when we discussed this 2 years ago, there was a process or discussion of whether or not we have this traditional method or if we went to a salary type structure or a hybrid. And now that we're self-organized, there is a way for us to do a little bit more creativity in terms of how we do that. So we're going to be discussing that at admin, and then admin will bring that forward as a recommendation for discussion to county board. So that's the compensation for the county board. The compensation study that's in here is actually we're doing a comprehensive study of our existing wage plan for all of our employees. And that'll be coming forward next month to the county board for your review and approval.
All right, good. Answers the question. Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay. All done?
Yep, I guess this is the next item on here.
So the next item is we're going to take the agenda out of order.
Oh, wait, David,
What?
I gotta do just one more item underneath.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, there's just one more item underneath this my report, but it's actually related to what was discussed at the admin committee, and this is their recommendation. If you go to page 10 of your packet, we had, I guess, discussions in regards to how to, I guess, conduct ourselves now that we're moving beyond the COVID in our emergency declaration. So again, in July, our emergency declaration expired. So now we're trying to set up some rules in terms of how we're providing access for individuals of the public to come to meetings or participate in meetings. So again, in working with Grant, and I don't know if Grant, you want to go in more detail, but Grant wanted to make sure that we're actually following the open meetings law, which we feel that this policy is. But in general, the meat of the content is really under item, I guess, B and C in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And I don't know if you want me to read those or explain them, or Grant, if you want to just cover it really quick.
If anybody has any questions, I think it's fairly straightforward. This is, again, what came out of the administrative committee meeting. Sub A defines public access, and what the recommendation being made from the committee is that the county maintain a remote view-only option for public access to meetings, hearings of the Door County Board and its subunits. Sub B discusses county board supervisors and other members. By other members, that is members of county committees that are not elected supervisors. Remote attendance would be permitted only for county board supervisors or other members who reside on Washington Island. Paragraph C addresses parties to, participants in, and attorneys or other representatives and witnesses that are involved in hearings. That will primarily impact the Board of Adjustment, the Resource Planning Committee, and the Land Conservation Committee. In-person attendance is the rule, but we've created an exception where remote attendance may be permissible if requested and approved in advance by the chairperson or their designee. Finally, sub D is just a statement indicating that the county's intent is to comply with Wisconsin's open meeting laws and also to be consistent with the Department of Justice memos that are mentioned there that came out in conjunction with the pandemic, which really carved out the legal means by which we can have remote options for meetings and hearings. So it's pretty straightforward.
Todd? Oh, never mind. So, Kara?
The first thing, it says a view-only option for public access. Does that mean that we won't have people being able to call in or speak the public comment? Is that what it means? I think that I think we should allow people to be able to come in if there's a Zoom meeting via the internet. I think that what the last 18 months has taught us is that people with disabilities or either mental or physical have been, screaming for ages about accessibility, and that things can really be accessible now. And what we've learned over the last 18 months is that we can make it accessible. And it seems weird to me that to take it away now that we have it, because what's possible is to have a lot of different voices and different people at the table. And all of the reasoning that I've heard when I've listened into different meetings is that it sounds like people think that other people are going to take advantage of something, but I've just not seen that happen, and I don't understand why we would make rules and legislate things that are not an issue or problem. And I just believe that keeping accessibility keeps the possibility of many different people becoming both board members and having the public being able to be more involved in government, which is something that I really believe in. Thank you.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sheet that was passed out that is our agenda, if you look at the very bottom of the sheet, any disability people can contact the clerk in 48 hours and everything would be taken care of as far as helping them with whatever they need to be here in person. So, as long as they notify within 48 hours, the clerk would make sure that everything would be taken care of so they could be here in person. Thank you.
Anybody else? Susan?
I guess I also think that we should extend the invitation to the public to speak virtually, I guess is the word I want. I don't see much of a downside to letting them do that. And so it's just one more way to make it accessible, and I would agree that we should continue what we've been doing and not take that back away.
Nissa?
I agree with Kara and Susie because I'm around disabled people more than a lot of others are. For instance, my son, his friends, and people in the community in general. And sometimes arranging to be here is not realistic if someone doesn't drive, people are homebound for different reasons. It could be health issues. And sometimes just being around others in public is just not always realistic based off of different health concerns. And I would say don't limit someone's access. I understand making the entire county board be here. That's fine, with the exception of it's horrible weather and keeping Joel safe. But when it comes to the average person who might have a physical, mental disability or health concerns, sometimes calling in or being online would be safer just for them. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Okay, so we will continue to look at it in the admin committee. I'm sorry. Bob?
Sorry, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear, like just now, just today, you gave the option for people to call in. Are you saying we're getting rid of that?
If this was adopted as a rule, yes.
Okay. Then I guess I think even beyond people with disabilities, and I know this has been talked about in the past, not in the recent couple of years, but people have thought in the past, well, couldn't we have meetings in the evening to make it more easy for people who are working people to come? So that's another burden for people who, if they have a 9 to 5 job, it's really hard for them to come and make a statement at this meeting if we're having it at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, which we do. So if they're able to break away from work for 15 minutes, you know, or however long it takes to call in, I guess, again, I don't see the downside. I mean, I would be in favor of still allowing people to call in like this. It doesn't, I don't see any downside. So, yeah, I guess I would, you know, speak to keep this call-in option available. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Megan?
The question I have is, has this presented any issues that I'm not aware of? I guess, has it been abused in some way? Has it, you know, impeded our ability to act as a county board? Because I'm not aware of any, in which case I think accessibility is a huge upside, and as is community involvement and awareness of the work that we're doing.
I guess the only thing I give context to is in terms of the discussion at admin was just that if I don't think there's any intent of all of individuals with medical or disabilities, but the main idea is that there are certain individuals that are, I guess, taking a different route with how they're speaking and engaging with the county board. And some people feel that if they're going to engage in that type of conduct, then they should be able to come into the meeting and say their piece that way. I guess the main way it was kind of discussed at the meeting and why that was kind of recommended in that fashion.
So you're saying that it has been abused?
Oh, I think I'm not speaking for the county board, but if some individuals feel that if they're going to be attacked, they'd like to be attacked with the person in the room and be able to see what they're actually engaging with versus just being able to call in and not show their face or do anything related to that. I'm not saying one way or another, but some people feel that that's part of the process for government is being able to at least have that engagement. So
I guess if we're going to go down that route, then we start looking at, you know, when that happens via text, via email, via letters, whatever else as well. You know, that's not face to face either. So that feels a bit muddy to me as a reason.
And it was a good discussion because I think part of it is you know, it's up for the chair too. I think all the chairs of the committees do a really good job, but they also need to be able to feel comfortable of saying that a comment's inappropriate or, you know, that type of thing. So I think that's as part of the process, and that's what it went back and forth, and this is what they put together as a recommendation. So, and they're looking for feedback, and we can adopt it or we can bring it back to admin and make adjustments based off your input today. So that was just a discussion.
May I make one more comment?
The other part of the discussion was we also have an opportunity to change it in November again when we do another reorganization. So the idea was, the underlying theme of the admin committee when we were talking about this was we're trying to go back to the pre-COVID times, and the pre-COVID times were pretty much what we're presenting now, except it did not allow the online Zoom attendance, and we were allowing that to allow that attendance to occur. And so we had a great deal of discussion about that, but we're trying to get it back to where it was, quote, pre-COVID and still allow access. And this was just an original recommendation. That's why we're getting the input. We're happy to go back and, you know, relook at it based on input, but that was the initial underlying direction. So.
Okay. Just the additional comment being for at least sharing health and human services, it has, I know, been helpful with our community partners that they've been able to weigh in online and make comments in that way. And I would also venture to say that we are still in pandemic times. We are sitting here, yes, meeting as a full county board. However, not everyone in our community has had the same opportunity to make that choice yet. We're not there yet. So I would suggest that we leave it how it is and take another look in November.
Todd? Excuse me, Todd?
Yeah, I obviously think a few folks have weighed in on this, but correspondence still would be able to come via writing, right? And if they were of the right nature, they would be read at the county board meeting, and, you know, the nature of that comment or whatever else would certainly be felt. I guess I view a little differently. I support going back to pre-COVID status as it relates to attendance. Of course, I'm a new member on the board, so maybe I don't know what it was like 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or eight years ago, but I do know, because I have sat in on school board meetings, I've listened to radio talk shows locally, and so on and so forth. You know, this whole Zoom attendance, Teams attendance, has made a lot of brave people, and people are pretty bold about what they say that they wouldn't necessarily say in person. And I've seen some really difficult meetings and some very difficult discussions, and I just don't think that belongs in a public setting. It gives folks certainly a forum to do some things that are probably unbecoming of board meetings and things of that facet. So if it's important enough, I think people will find a way to make their comments. They have 3 minutes, and I personally support the pre-pandemic position that admin committee has suggested.
Okay, thank you. Dave Enigo?
First question, typically we don't have a discussion item where we're gonna vote on underneath county administrator. Are we voting on this item? This
No.
is just an update is all it is, right?
Yeah, what it was is we put this together as a possible amendment to our rules. That's why it's actually listed as item 42, meetings, hearings, or remote options. So the admin committee put this together. They wanted to bring it back or bring it to the county board for discussion. And the intent was, well, depending on, is the will of the board. But the main idea is to have a discussion and probably discuss it again next month.
Okay. I'm gonna look at it a slightly different way. I have attended many meetings through the years at various state levels and county levels, city, town. And pandemic has introduced a new technology that has helped for the general public. But I still look at it as the core aspect of the statutes. I personally do not interpret the statutes as allowing remote participation. It's fine that our corporate counsel says that. I mean, we have a board, Department of Justice opinion of it that says that we can do it. That's today. Change governors, tomorrow might be a completely different answer. But the statutes are, in my mind, fairly clear that you need to attend the meeting itself. I've sat on RPC, I've sat in Board of Adjustment meetings where if you automatically allowed participants to remote connect to it, you can have the simple issue of halfway through their testimony, the connection disappears. They always have the option at those meetings, as here, and as have occurred here today, to send somebody in to represent them for whatever reason. In this case, it was a different, she simply could not be here, so she found somebody who was willing to speak on her behalf. We often have lawyers come in. We often have at RPC neighbors come in. They simply can't make it from Chicago, can't make it from Indiana. I am perfectly fine with the change as it is. It opens up the venue for the public to visually see what's going on in the government. We are recording that information anyways. But I'm not comfortable allowing consistent, regular interaction at a legal meeting of the participants that are expected to participate and talk and give their testimony. I could easily see this running into, well, I lost my internet connection, so now I need to have a new meeting, and I'm just not comfortable going that route. Absolutely, people need access to it. I love it. I think that this has really opened up the ability for people to communicate. But there is a veil of disguise that can occur in how you respond and how you interact with an individual through an internet connection rather than personally being in the meeting. So I'm comfortable as written here. And I've constantly been in favor of anybody representing the island for any reason being in a logical exception of being permitted for them due to the weather. RPC does that now. If there's a big storm that comes up and you can't attend your meeting, we recognize that and we move it on to the next meeting. So that part of it's taken care of it. But to allow actual required participants to routinely come in remotely opens up a window that I don't think the statutes allow us to have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Nissa?
So I'm going to totally use Joel's name, so sorry. So I understand Joel meeting remote. zero issues with that, if weather is bad and all that. But then when it comes to public access, that can only be view only. So if someone's on the island and weather is bad, and they were planning on coming here and wanted to speak, that limits their being able to speak on whatever topic they want to talk about. And then does the island feel like it's not getting its voice heard to all of us? Granted, they can call up Joel and talk to him at any moment, but that's one concern, is where the island feels like they're going to be represented in front of all of us, not just calling Joel at home. And I don't have any problem with him doing remote if weather is bad. That's not an issue at all. That's totally fine. But if their only access realistically would be remote because of weather, then they can only view only and can't talk during public comment because, you know, snow, rain, whatever. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will take your comments into consideration at the next admin meeting as we review it again. Anything else? Okay, so we're gonna take, we have a few people that need to leave between 10:30 and 11. So we're going to take the agenda out of order, and we're going to move the election of the highway committee member up to the next agenda item. And I would ask Grant to explain why we, quote, need to have the election today.
Very briefly, the way I interpret the statute is that if there's a vacancy on the county highway committee, it's to be filled at the next regular meeting of the county board.
Okay. So that's why we're doing the highway election. To update you on, we extended the time to allow people to express their interest in the vacant seat that's out there, Laura's vacant seat. Originally, it was July 15th. Because of the holidays and summer vacations, a couple people called me that said they may have an interest in it, but they were out of town and would not be able to put something together. So we agreed to extend it for an additional 1 month period of time to allow anybody who may want to express an interest in the position to be able to do that. So hopefully next month we'll come back and we'll have a recommendation on that position. So that's why we're moving ahead with the highway election today.
Joe, you explain the process?
Explain the process.
Yep, so you're first gonna get a pink ballot. This is your nominating ballot. This is for highway at large, number 2. You will nominate, obviously somebody that's not on there. It cannot be anybody in the south because we already have 2 reps on for the south, so it'd have to be city or north.
And who can that be?
Oh, gosh. Well, that could be.
You can-
Right? Let's go. Who can it not be? It cannot be Roy. It cannot be David Engelbert. It cannot be, well, Joel's already on there. It cannot be Susie. It cannot be Nancy. It cannot be Kara. It cannot be Todd. That's it. I guess it was a horse apiece.
Okay.
Do we have to nominate somebody?
Yes. Well, no. I mean, I guess you can leave yours blank. You will write a name and you will sign your name on the back. These are signed ballots and nominating.
Kind of the back of the pink too for the nomination, or just the green one?
Both. Yeah.
You don't have to fold them because I gotta unfold them to have them read.
Well, now I want to. Yeah.
I'll do the hidden.
I want to throw this all.
Out of my chest, so I can't see.
Yes.
I want to make an airplane out of it and have you play with it. Very small airplane. Origami? It's not a square, but you know, we can make it work.
How origami square? I don't remember that.
All the ones I did, that doesn't mean much.
I mean, like in school, we have origami.
You know that little thing with your fingers and go like that, and you pick a number.
What's his biz?
So much drama.
I got it all in the ballot. So I can start passing these out, right?
Yep. Okay, nominations are Alexis Peter, Bob Boatman, Beth Gauger, Morgan Rusnick, and Dave Inigo. Are you ready to vote?
Well, normally we ask for so if you have been nominated, you can accept the nomination and we go to the vote, or if you'd like to withdraw, you can withdraw. But if that's the case, now you go through and you vote, and then we'll collect the vote. We go through multiple rounds, and we'll do that. So if you could vote, I'll come collect. Say the names again. Say
Yep.
the names again.
Alexis Peter, Bob Boatman, Elizabeth Gauger, Morgan Rusnick, David Inigo.
Yes.
You did not give him a ballot.
You're not allowed to vote.
Thank you. Oh, I get two.
No.
Yes.
I told you, where did it come? Bill has one.
We might not need it. You might not need it. Let's just wait.
I like how you're calling him out of edits on this stuff.
Yeah, because you guys always get me in that role.
Well, we're even
Because I'm so
short, and it's still one short.
All right, we don't need it. There are 12 votes for, right? 12 votes for David Inigo, 1 for Bob Boatman, 2 for Elizabeth Gauger, 3 for Alexis Peter, and 1 for Morgan Rusnick. So majority vote is David Inigo.
Congratulations, Dave. That's it? Yep. All right, so we'll go back up to our agenda. Resolutions in memoriam of Daryl Graff. Susan?
Number 2021-50, in memoriam Daryl Graff, to the Door County Board of Supervisors. Whereas Daryl Graff passed away on June 21st, 2021, and whereas Supervisor Graff was first elected to the Door County Board of Supervisors and served from April 1968 through April 1972, and whereas Supervisor Graff represented Supervisory District 13, including the City of Sturgeon Bay Wards 2, 3, and 6, and whereas Supervisor Graff served on several committees, including Finance Committee, Health Commission, Legislative Committee, and Social Services Board, and whereas Supervisor Graff also served as Chairman of Legislative Committee, now therefore be it resolved that the County Board of Supervisors, assembled in regular session this 27th day of July, 2021, extend our sincere sympathy to the family of Daryl Graff with this acknowledgement of his dedication to the citizens of the County of Door.
Thank you, Susan. By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Resolution 2021-51, recognizing Supervisor Laura Valai's Wadachek in service to the county board. Usually we have the new member replacing the old member do this. Since we don't have somebody doing it, I will have the honor today. Resolution 2021-51, recognizing Supervisor Laura Valai's Wadachek in service to the county board. Whereas Laura was first appointed to the Door County Board of Supervisors in January 2017, she was duly elected to subsequent terms and served through June 17, 2021. And whereas Supervisor Velaz Wadachek represented Supervisory District 9 encompassing the city of Sturgeon Bay, Wards 5 and 6, and 22 through 24. And whereas during her tenure, she served on many committees and boards, including Airport and Parks, the Ambassador Program, Board of Health, Economic Development, SBDCED, Loan Fund Committee Representation, Emergency Services, Finance, Highway and Airport, Human Services, Law Enforcement, Legislative, Negotiating, Public Safety, Risk Management and Insurance, Security and Facilities Rep for Sister City Informal Advisory Group and Delegation of Jindazen, and the Citizen Participation Committee for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program. Whereas Supervisor Wadachek also served as chairperson of the Wisconsin Development Fund RLF and Citizen Participation CDBG Committee, she was also the first female member of the Highway and Airport Committee. Now therefore it be resolved that the Door County Board of Supervisors assembled this 27th day of July 2021 extends to Laura Velaz Wadachek our sincere thanks and appreciation for her service to the people of Door County and wish her the best in future endeavors. I'll make the motion. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Resolution 2021-52, authorize application for an acceptance of financial assistance for parking lot resurfacing and ADA boat launch dock at Forestville Vam, Door County Park. Mr. Ostead.
Yes, this is just an application to get the money from for the parks. I don't know if Wayne wants to add to it or not, he's back there.
Make a motion, Dan?
I hit motion,
Oh, there was a second.
how's that?
Wayne, do you want to add anything?
Oh, here's my thumb from the
If there's questions, I can certainly entertain those.
Any questions? Voter board. Since this involved funds, we will go to the voter board. That is passed on a vote of 19 yea, 1 excused and 1 absent. Resolution 2021-53, the Ad Hoc Redistricting Committee. Ken, would you like to?
Sure. Let me give you some context really quick in regards to what we're trying to accomplish. I actually put out a handout in front of you, so it kind of gives you a timeline. We kind of mentioned it a few months back, but this is a reminder. After the census is done, we go through a process defining what's called the redistricting. As part of our responsibility as the county, we are going to be defining the supervisory districts. And then once we have the supervisory districts defined, then we also work with the local municipalities to help them set up their wards. So it's a multi-stage process. Normally, this would have started much earlier. But again, due to COVID, all of that census data has been postponed. And now we're expecting it to be transmitted somewhere between late August to the first part of September. So with that data coming in, the legislative body at the state and also the governor did have some discussions, but they could not, I guess, come to any resolve in terms of how to work with the schedule or make any adjustments. So in essence, we're back to the original schedule by statute to get this done. So it'll be a quick process on our end. Again, we're looking at getting that data. In September, we'll do what we consider the draft maps. Then that comes back to the county board for their approval. Then once those draft maps are done, we then send those quote unquote out to the local municipalities to define their wards. They'll have about a 2.5 week window to get those done. And then that all comes back to a group to refer that back then to the county board for adoption. So it's gonna be a really short window for us to get this done and accomplished. And to do so, just based off the timing, we do want to set up the ad hoc redistricting committee. And again, the resolution or the recommendation, just working with David and Susie in terms of who would sit on that is in the packet, and we're looking for that to move forward. That's on page 14 of your packet. And if there's any questions, Jill and I can help answer those.
No questions?
Nope.
There we go. David, Enigo?
Just a real stupid one based on how our federal and state governments have been operating. November 23rd is effectively when it would be published as adopted. Does that get a 30-day window before it goes into effect, or what?
The redistricting?
Yeah, the 23rd is the publishing of the notice, right?
The 23rd would be the publishing of the spring election notice. That's the importance of the 23rd. November 23rd?
Okay, so that, because it doesn't say the spring, I knew it was sometime in that window. So my question there is simply, has anybody heard any rumors of the state or the federal government being obnoxiously stupid and deciding to do something that would push that back? Because clearly we got 21 board members here that are on the election in April.
No, like I said, there was legislation that was proposed to actually push everything back, and that was vetoed by the governor.
And no rumors of another one, I guess is what I'm
But
saying.
we haven't heard anything. I've been monitoring the stuff through WCA and the discussions, and right now they're not planning to do any other discussions, so we're kind of stuck with the statutory timeline that's been defined. So that's what we have to follow.
Thank you.
David Engelbert? I'm sorry, Roy Engelbert.
Thank you. What tools is the chair going to, or the committee going to have to set up these wards or these districts? Last time I remember there was a computer program. Are they going to have that same program?
Correct. So there's actually a computer program that's actually very, I guess, technology savvy that allows us to set up the districts pretty fast. There's rules that are supposed to follow, and we'll try to do that in terms of making sure the districts are compact. You can try to do certain things in terms of trying to make sure they're similar to the past, or you can change them. But there's certain requirements that we need to meet in terms of standard deviation as far as the number of individuals that are represented. So all those criteria are as part of the process, and that's where this committee would sit in and kind of monitor and make recommendations in terms of the creation of those maps.
David Engelbert?
Yes, item B on that Exhibit A, I guess I'm a little unclear on how that works. In the past, I was on the impression the county created the, say, the wards in the neighboring towns, or how it worked. Is the county presenting that to the towns, or are they doing that exactly?
So again,
this is transmittal of adopted tentative districts. I mean,
So again, the county goes through and we actually define our districts first, our supervisory districts, our 21 districts.
Okay.
Then those are provided to the local municipalities. And that, in case there was a line or something like that, then they have to go through and establish their wards. So when we create our maps, obviously we look at our supervisory districts, but we'll look at municipal boundaries, school districts, and so forth. Likewise, when it gets to the township level or city village level, they'll do the same thing. They'll look at our boundary now, and then also look at the school district lines and so forth, and then they define their wards. So in the past, we've offered assistance, and we'll probably do the same thing in this process. We actually have our LIO officer actually help coordinate that with each one of the communities. So then that goes through a process. Each local municipality will then adopt their ward plan. That ward plan is then submitted back to the county, and that's all compiled as a package in terms of going back to the state.
Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion and a second by voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2021-54, capital improvements plans for 2022 through 2026, which is attached in your county board reports and miscellaneous folder, unless you have a summary. David?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-54. That pertains to the capital improvement program, which the finance committee approved at its last meeting. It's a 5-year plan for items.
5 years of life over $50,000 in cost. That's non-reoccurring. And I'll give a lot of credit to Administrator Pavich and our finance director, Steve, for all the work they put into presenting an initial plan and then making a number of changes that are presented here today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do the general overview and Steve will be my backup in just in terms of being able to answer any questions, but we'd like to just kind of walk through. But just for a reminder, so this is our capital improvement plan and we adopt it, obviously, but it is still a planning document. So as the whole budget starts to come together, there's still the opportunity for us to make adjustments if we see that, and we'll inform you if we do that. But in essence, the way this document works, it gives you an idea of where we think our expenditures are going to be for our large items over the next 5-year period. Obviously, the main item, as far as the plan adoption today, will be our direct input to what goes into our 2022 budget. But then again, it also gives us the framework for the following 4 years after that in terms of where we're looking at our expenditures. Just for those that are, as a reminder too, normally what we try to do with our budget is obviously we try to remove spikes or anything that would throw our budget out of whack. Again, our general sweet spot is around that $4.5 million mark. Again, it can give or take year to year. But again, we try to avoid things that are, 2 million, then 8 million in next year, because that affects how we operate in our budget overall. So we try to keep that somewhat stable. And then when these things come in, we'll make adjustments to kind of make that come together. So what you're going to see in the document itself, we're just going to walk through some tables really quick and just kind of go through that. But what we do just for your information is we have everything that was submitted, in essence, in black. And then the items in red were the changes that were recommended that Steve and I worked through and put that together and presented that to finance, and they accepted those changes. And that's what's proposed to be adopted today. So let's go to page 7. So we're going to start with table 1. And you'll see I'll kind of go through and I'll focus mainly on the area of changes. But in the airport, we did not have any recommended changes. Under the highway, what you're going to see is a number of changes within highway. And the number of changes you're seeing at highway is really kind of balancing out the projects. Again, if you looked at the original version, they had some spikes out at year 4 and 5. So we're trying to, balance that out with some of our other projects. So in essence, for the main change for highway, we actually moved one project up. And where you'll see that the funding actually says other, and it says other from highway reserve. So let me just explain what that is, so if there's any confusion on it. For the highway department itself, we actually have a reserve set up for the county to protect ourselves as a customer buying services. So when we buy services, we're buying really our roads, as far as our paving, we're buying road maintenance, and we buy our snow plowing. So think of us as a customer buying those services from the highway department. Just to insulate ourselves from let's say a bad year as far as storms, our snow plowing, or if we had like a major storm, that type of thing, we actually have a reserve set up, about $500,000 that we have set aside to account for any shortfall we have for that. There was another reserve that we're talking about here, which is separate. So when we say we're going to spend, for example, $3 million on roads this year, those are all estimates that were put together by highway. And now they go out and they actually do the bid. Obviously, lots dependent on oil prices and how long it actually takes. But let's say when they did all that work, that money comes in and they only spent $2.8 million. So we had $2 million left that was not spent on road projects, which is to our benefit. So that money has been sitting in an account building up as a reserve. So what we're proposing to do is actually take that reserve and actually use that money within the KIP instead of having it sit there. So that's where it says other from highway reserve, that's what it's referring to. So we're not, in essence, it's been levied in the past, but now we're just taking that money and now we're using it towards, in this case, this project. So that's what that reference is. Then likewise, if you go down then to facilities and parks, what was in there was actually the elevator. Oops, sorry. Do I have the right one? Yes, the elevator replacement. So again, in that project, it's just a matter, again, of balancing our expenses. Wayne did a nice job in trying to, I guess, break up the project into multiple years. And I guess what we're saying now is not to break it up, and we're going to get it done next year, just because it fits within our expenditures and it really needs to be done. So you'll see that we're actually moving that up. That was a change, so you see it crossed out, and then below you actually see it as the full amount of the project cost. Likewise, we also added a project in terms of the wayside pit toilets at there's two locations for that at the two old waysides, which are now ours. Again, we've actually had a lot of issues with individuals still using the facilities, literally. They have gone through the process of putting up pit toilets, but again, long-term, that's not a good option for us to have, so that's why we're recommending that as an option. And we're looking at, again, we moved that up in our recommendation till next year. So then if you just turn the page, you'll see the sheriff, there's no changes recommended there. Likewise for emergency management, I guess the one item just to kind of point out, as far as a large item, is the tower replacement. Again, we're starting to set aside money in terms of our tower project, wherever that's gonna go. We know it's gonna be a sizable expense. So what we're trying to do is just build that up over time. So you'll see through here, we're doing $500,000 a year, and I think at 2025 we have that big $20 million mark out there, and I'll point that out to you. Hopefully it's not that much, but right now that's the best number we have, but we'll go towards that. So long story short, so for 2022 you go down to the bottom, you'll see that the total KIP, you can see the total expenditures, but to me the main number that you'd be interested in would be the levy portion, and you'll see that it comes in at 4.554344. So if you compare that to last year, we're within $3,000, so it actually, with the rounding, it's just that 0% change, which is spot on is what we want to be able to do. So now I'm just going to go a little bit quicker on the other ones now that you see the routine in terms of how we changed it. I'll go through tables 3, 4, and 5, and those are the, I guess, the next years after that. I think it's important to go through them just so you know kind of where projects are at, because they've been discussed at committees, and I think it's important enough to go through. So again, the airport, no significant changes. Under the highway, you're not going to see any major changes except, again, we're just moving projects around in terms of how we're funding them. So a lot of them, for example, you'll see County A was moved up, so it's crossed out, but now we moved up other projects from a previous year, so we're moving projects up. So again, it's just a matter of I guess, balancing our expenses in terms of our roads and so forth. Again, with highway, our sweet point is about 3.6 to 3.8 million in terms of funding for roads each year. And that's kind of where we see. So you see it that year it came in at 3.598. Then you'll see facilities and parks. You'll see 3 of those projects were then crossed out because we made those changes. But then we did add on what we're calling the campus project. Again, you're looking at a total project cost of $5 million. Again, that's just a guess on our part of what that total project cost would be. But we are not looking at contributing $5 million. We're recommending that you'll see in the text there that we set aside $1.6 million from that highway reserve. So in other words, we're going to take that money and put it into account, and we'll define that account for whatever this campus project is. I guess what I'm saying, and again, this is where the policy comes in, and we can always change our mind, but right now we're saying is that anything above 1.6, we're expecting that funding to come from somewhere else, whether it's our partner with the city in terms of, because they partially own the library, or whether they do fundraising or whatever happens. But we're looking at our contribution right now being $1.6 million. You'll see under emergency services, we actually crossed out the Egg Harbor ambulance station. That actually got moved back, and I'll point that out to where we moved it back to. The one item that is added or has been recommended is our public safety, the address signing. That's gone back and forth, but we do have that identified for 2023 in terms of a project. Likewise, then you'll see under the sheriff, you'll see another one that's where it's the $250,000, we just modified where the funding source is coming from. So we're taking that money again from that reserve account to make that happen. But there was some smaller reserves too. So you'll see that list where it says other. So we had some small accounts that had where the projects came in under. So now we're cleaning up all those accounts where those are closed projects, and now we're applying it to the mobile radio replacement. And that's where that money is actually coming from that. And then likewise, you'll again see we did the tower replacement, but now again, we're taking some of that money out of reserve versus it coming from the tax levy. Then going to the next page, page 10, you'll see again some quicker items in terms of making some modifications to our highway projects. Facilities and parks was just canceling out the elevator replacement, because that's been done. And that was the changes for 2024. Then if you go to 2025, again, you'll see some changes to our highway projects, again, in terms of how we're funding. And then that's where we inserted back in the Egg Harbor Ambulance Station in terms of that year in 2025. So if you go then to, then 2026, I'm sorry, is also included. And again, that's just a modification of the highway project itself. So I'm going to have you jump now to page, there's a whole bunch of different tables, the different ways of looking at it, but I think the one that's most valuable, if you go to page 20 of your packet, I guess that says table 8. In that table, what it shows you is it shows you the fiscal year 22 all the way through 26, and it shows you all those expenditures each year that's going on. And then it has a total summary by funding source. So you'll see what we're spending or projecting to spend each year in terms of projects. Obviously, the two items that stand out to me is obviously the 20 million to be determined as of 2026. Obviously, you're looking at that large of an expenditure. We're probably looking at a bonding scenario. But again, we're still learning more of where that's going to go in the future. But again, we want to place this on the radar so we know what we're going to, I guess, be facing in the future. But I think the main item on this one would be the tax levy portion, because again, that's what we're trying to manage. So if you look at right at the middle of the page, you'll see that it says the tax levy. And you'll see with those changes, I think we're pretty dialed in terms of the next 5 years of our planning for our expenditures. So we're at 4.5, next year 4.5, then 4.4. Then we have a blip up in 25 to that 5 million. Again, that's where we added the station, so it's a little bit up, but it's definitely doable. But then we're down in 2026 down to the 4.0 million. So again, obviously, when you get to those later years, we're going to have adjustments. We'll have other projects that creep in. But again, in terms of a planning document, it puts us in a very good spot in terms of our expenditures and what we're trying to accomplish. So I don't know if there's any other questions. Or Steve, did I miss anything in terms of what you think we need to add?
Dave, Enigo?
Thank you. Page 24 of the packet. For the campus project part, facilities and parks, you made the comment that the objective would be 1.6 of our cost and the balance from whatever sources. Just for clarification to those might sit there and say, okay, where's the rest of the 5 million coming from? Can we make a note that of other, like we've done in the past, we've listed other potential funding sources like donations and so forth. So if some people see that, well, there's a project I will be willing to contact the county about donating money for, just as a line item description if that's possible.
Sure, we can make that clarification. That's not a problem.
Okay, and then the broken record, countywide address sign placement. Procedurally, if I understand correctly, CIP projects are supposed to come from the oversight committee, correct? Involved with the item.
Again, so this is going to be one of those things we're not. So we're not sure.
I'm not actually going to be argumentative. No. I'm going to make a suggestion, and so you don't have to go in that direction.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, if you want to do it on any public safety, I don't care. That's fine. I don't think it fits in our list of requirements for CIP programs because it's defined as a municipal obligation. But if you want to put it there, can you transfer the whole addressing system over to that committee then? To that department? Because right now it's underneath land use. And the oversight committee has said no to, has turned it down, and now it's underneath public safety.
Okay. Oh, there we go. I was just saying, there's just a noise on the phone we're trying to get, okay. So yeah, so the question, just so everyone's aware of, as far as the oversight, so we have, right now, Land Use Services, I guess, administers the address program. And they also will work with the townships in terms of if the sign becomes faded and doing that type of enforcement. So the question is where does that best reside long-term? Or I guess I can just say that right now that's being looked at. Now that we have a new LIO, he's looking at our address program, and there is, I guess, discussions of whether it would stay there or ultimately change to a public safety function. But we are looking at that, but right now, as it currently sits, it's still under Land Use Services. So in terms of where the project came from, though, is that it has gone back and forth between the two committees. But from a public safety standpoint, that committee's been really consistent in terms of those signs needing to be replaced countywide, and that was their recommendation again this year. So that's why it got included from the public safety side. So I know there's different opinions from land use services in terms of the actual administration, how it might be done, but in terms of the asset itself, the recommendation is that it needs to be replaced and updated. So I'm looking at it from an asset standpoint, and then I know there's a jurisdiction of it and ultimately the administration of it, but from the asset needs to be replaced.
Well, and as an asset, the county doesn't own them, so it's not a county asset. By that definition, you could apply that to stop signs and yield ahead signs, speed limit signs, and so forth. But it does sit underneath land use. It specifically states ordering and placement of signs. So if the public safety committee and the public safety entity, I do know that it's coming from the sheriff's department, the emergency services in general. And we have a mechanism for replacing the signs already. It's through the ownership of the property. They're required to update their signs as they fade. That's in the ordinance as well. But I would advocate, if it's been over the last 3 years, it's been a strong push through the public safety direction, that if they wish to be of concern for it, then I would push to have it taken out of land use altogether and move it over to that direction to be oversight, taking care of everything. So, thank you.
David Engelbert?
Yes, it was a point of discussion at finance, and I guess I was a proponent of this plan, or including it in the CIP. We haven't been able to move it forward in the last couple of years because I guess RPC has a different view of where it's at, but we have one committee recommending, and I think the finance committee as a whole felt that we could insert that into the CIP and kind of push the issue so that there'd be some resolution on how it's done. And the majority of that highway committee felt that it was a needed project that should be addressed.
Okay. Anybody else? Joel?
I just want to make a comment on it. I mean, taking in all the information everybody's talking about, from an asset perspective, Ken's 100%. I personally don't care what it's laid out in the CIP as far as funding goes. It's got to get done. I think we all can agree on that if you look at the countywide program. Where it falls under, who cares at this point, it's got to get done. But to me, it seems like it might make sense to actually fall under the highway department to a point, because they have the ability to do signs, construction, repair, maintenance, make new. And rather than right now, we're in the game where we're doing all of it or suggested to do all of it. Whereas, as we know, highway committee members know that over time, they do sign replacement and repairs. There's a sign guy that does this throughout the whole county all year long. And so to me, logically, it makes sense that maybe that department takes over the signage program and slowly, incrementally keeps it going as they do now over time going forward in the future. It's just a thought. I don't know. Obviously, Ken and the management are going to figure it out, but it's an idea of a place to put it.
Again, just for clarification too, this for the whole county board, is that there's two ways we're doing the maintenance. So if your sign is faded, we can go through and you'll get a letter saying, please replace your sign, and we can order that. I think what the main concern is part of it is that there's, I guess this is the age of the signs. There's a growing number of those throughout the county that are going, or at that age, that need to be replaced as an asset. But also too, they're looking at going to what's considered a double facing sign. That's more available, I guess would be readable from both directions of traffic. So again, we're actually looking at changing that standard. So it's not, you're not gonna have the ability just to, from a public safety standpoint, they had that discussion. You don't want to just start doing a sign, one sign here and one sign there. I mean, you could take 50 years before you end up replacing all those signs and have a consistent signage. So that's why it's put in as one big project. I mean, you're really gonna go and you're gonna, there's different ways of funding it. I guess that could be, this is the high end. In other words, the county, we talked about it at finance and also public safety. This might be the high end where the county actually says, we're gonna do this across the board and we're gonna pay for it. There's a way we can offset that and charge a fee to the residents and so forth. That's all has to be worked out. So this is a placeholder for the high end. But again, if we do that, we go to a different sign, we gotta do it across the board, because you don't wanna have piecemeal signs throughout the county from a public safety standpoint. And that's what was the discussion at public safety and also at finance.
Alexis?
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you could remember the example that was discussed at either public safety or finance about there was a township that we did go through the proper process, letters went out to X amount of homeowners, and only a small fraction actually ended up replacing their signs. Do you remember does somebody remember which one that was? And I guess the point being just that the example in the discussion was that we have tried to go through the proper process of updating the signs, but when the homeowner is responsible for the cost, there's mixed implementation, I guess. Thank you.
David Engelbert?
Yes, I guess the initial request probably came from the towns in the Brussels Union Gardner Fire Department area that they were recognizing a whole bunch of signs were not in the best of shape. Some that were the imprinted signs purchased through sign companies, some from the highway department, which were faded just as much also. And that's a kind of a laminated sign like the stop signs or the other road signs. As you travel around the state, pay attention to the different towns that you're traveling through. I'd say the vast majority that I've been through across the state going into Brown County are the two-way signs. That's what the emergency services and sheriff's department find most useful to them in finding the properties, and this would give us an opportunity to have those signs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Todd?
Yeah, mine is just more general in a sense of finance in general. Is there any expected offset from the CARES program, or can you not be spending CARES Act dollars on capital improvement programs? Just I see this across the line. Maybe it can't be used for those. That's question number one. Maybe I'll have a follow on.
Sure. So the discussion is on our CARES Act funding. There are actually a whole set of rules that I guess restrict how that money is spent and how it's tracked. There's also been presented at Finance Committee. There's a way to, I'll call it defederalize it or declassify it from that act, depending on our loss. So we'll be discussing that when we do the retreat, because there's been requests for how we might use that funding, whether you look at it for broadband, housing, human services, there's some ideas. So there's a whole series of ideas on how that money could be used. But we'll be discussing that at our retreat, hopefully, to see how that would be done.
From what you know now, is it prohibited to be used for capital improvement programs if they fell underneath the umbrella?
There's certain expenses that are allowed, like something like this, the signs, I don't think would qualify.
I'm not talking about.
I know,
I'm just talking, CIP, just from a taxpayer and the taxpayer,
No, I mean,
responsibility perspective. The county got a pile of money. I just would have thought that somewhere along the line you'd see some dips in our CIP if some of that could be spent in capital projects.
Some of that could be, like, for example, broadband, to me, it'd be a capital project. So if we want to do something to address our broadband in the county, that'd be an idea where you could use that as a capital project towards that. And that's one of the categories defined within the regulations that have been published in terms of where you can use that money.
Okay.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a generic question about highway repaving. I'm just curious, as far as the order, is it sort of by age or by calendar that those, it'll be the same order kind of going through, or do people actually go out and like assess the conditions in these certain highway, to then decide which ones get, I'm just curious, like how the highways are how they're decided, what order?
So all of the roads are built into a computer system. It's called Phaser. So they go through and they'll actually do an assessment on all the roads. And they're actually scored and ranked in terms of that. And again, what we do in our projects is they're working with that software to put together this list of projects. But again, what we do each year, like even for next year, we have these roads identified as in terms of our funding for next year. But the highway committee will actually go out, and if Thad finds a road that got hit really bad through winter, that's changed its conditions significantly, the highway committee just knows that they have that amount of money they can spend on roads, and they can adjust the projects as needed. but that's actually tracked through our system, all the county roads for sure, and all local municipalities do the same thing, but all of our county road assets are all within that software package with a rating and everything in terms of their segments and then, their condition overall.
Okay. Is that something that, the software package, is it something like, is it somehow just attached to the vehicle and you drive around and it sort of like analyzes it, or is it like you're entering data based on a person's observation?
They'll enter, I know it can collect pictures and stuff like that, but a lot of it's based off field observations of actually driving the roads.
Interesting, thank you.
Could you explain the life cycle replacement and why we're at that $4 to $5 million a year on the?
Sure. So the question is our replacement schedule for our roads. So again, the county board previous had established that as a priority. So we're actually on about a 17-year cycle of actually replacing or doing some type of maintenance on all of our roads. So again, if you're familiar, like for example, the city went through that process when they're looking at the Pratt tax and explained that they're at a 60-year cycle, and that's way at the other end of the spectrum. So an average road life for Wisconsin, frost and everything else, the conditions that we have for asphalt is usually about 20 years. Some of our assets do last longer, and we don't replace them just at 20 years, but our goal is to have some roads that are deteriorating faster than that and some that are lasting longer. That's why we use that software, but in general, we try to get at least 17 miles of road work done each year, and that puts us on that cycle where we're actually funding our roads. So from our standpoint, we're in a very, very strong position for that.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, we will go to the voter board. That is passed by a majority of 17 yea, 1 nay, and 3 absent. Thank you. There are no ordinances today. There's no special reports. Any oral committee reports from anybody? Any review of committee minutes? Anybody have any comments on reviewing the vouchers, claims, and bills? Announcements. Our next regular county board meeting will be August 24th at 9 a.m. The WCA annual conference is September 26th through the 28th in La Crosse. Jill, do you want to mention outerwear?
Outerwear, sure. So we had a year off of shirts. So we can order shirts again this year. They will be a lovely green. I will get you prices via email. If you're interested, just let me know. I'll give you a deadline so we can get those ordered in process.
Okay.
Are they clothes like the previous incident? Yeah.
Okay. The meeting per diem code is 727. And a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to be transacted, since we adopted the KIP program, we certainly did our due diligence by spending a lot of money. But I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Jill, did you want to?
If anybody wants fair buttons, Dan had said that there would be here. Barb's in the back with them, and you can purchase them from her.
What about the treat sign up? Is that still going on?
Treat sign up is on the back by the sink, and if you'd like to bring treats for a month, you could just put your name down for the month you'd like to bring them, and when you bring them, they can go in the back.
Thank you.